Hey, thanks for taking 10 minutes to watch CNN Student News. I'm Carl Azus at the CNN Center, and today's commercial-free coverage begins in Iraq. The Middle Eastern country had nationwide elections yesterday, the first since U.S. combat troops left the country in 2011. Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is running for a third term in office. He says turnout was expected to be historically high, and that's despite worsening waves of violence. At least 7 people were killed yesterday in attacks at polling stations. The United Nations says last year was Iraq's deadliest since 2008, that more than 8,800 people, mostly civilians, were killed in different attacks. Sectarian violence, fighting between Sunni and Shiite Muslims, is the cause of a lot of it. But terrorism also factors in, with al-Qaeda-linked groups fighting Iraqi government forces. Next story today, the same storm system that brought deadly tornadoes to the central and southeastern U.S. has had another disastrous effect: flooding. What looks like a river in this Florida neighborhood was actually a street. Look at this, a rush of muddy water where there should be asphalt and traffic. The Florida Panhandle is no stranger to heavy storms and hurricanes, but some of the folks CNN talked to in the area told us they've never seen anything like this. Almost 19 inches of rain in just 24 hours fell on parts of Florida and Alabama. Florida's governor has declared a state of emergency and warned that more rain and flooding could be ahead. He says 200 rescues out of 300 requests have been made. In some places, responders have had to get creative.
They have gone up there with chainsaws to try to be able to cut holes in the roofs to try to be able to get the people out of there, because the water levels have risen chest high and deeper, and apparently in some of these homes, and so there's nowhere to go but up. And once you get up there in the attic, as you know, Bob, you really can't go anywhere else. So they're trying to utilize the chainsaws to be able to cut some folks out. I don't have a specific update on how far along we are on that progress. Just getting to those locations has just been a logistical nightmare.
Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, or MERS, has sickened hundreds of people in Saudi Arabia. Those who've come down with the virus in other places had traveled to the Middle East first. There hasn't been a case in the U.S., but the CDC is working with hospitals to prepare for the possibility. MERS attacks the respiratory system. It's killed almost a third of those who've gotten it. What scientists don't know about MERS is how it spreads exactly and how to prevent infections. For now, they're telling travelers to keep cautious and keep their hands washed.
It's the deadly coronavirus called MERS-CoV for short. The virus comes from the same group as a common cold and attacks the respiratory system. It's not clear exactly how the virus is spread, but the World Health Organization says to look out for symptoms like fever, cough, shortness of breath, in conjunction with recent travel to the Arabian Peninsula. That's because all the cases so far have been related to travelers to the region. MERS was first detected in Saudi Arabia in 2012, and that's where the majority of cases still are. Others were reported across the Middle East, in Europe, and as far as Malaysia. So far, more than 300 cases have been reported worldwide, including more than 100 deaths. But in the past month, there's been a 30% spike in the total number of cases, including nearly 24 reported here in the UAE. Authorities say they're monitoring the situation and there's no need for panic, but social media is rife with messages of concern. So when are we supposed to freak out about the MERS coronavirus in the UAE, says one. Should we be worried about MERS or about the lack of transparency from health authorities, says another. Health authorities in Saudi Arabia are under growing pressure. The health minister was removed from his post as the number of cases in the kingdom spiked, more than 100 new cases in the past month alone. Officials say they don't know what's causing the sudden surge, but they're calling on the World Health Organization and other medical experts to help curb it. Sending out text messages to 30 million residents earlier this month, asking them to contact the ministry with questions. That's essential in a country where millions of Muslims converge in the holy city of Mecca every year for pilgrimages. But with the recent uptick in the number of cases, public concern is sure to rise. Leonie Lakhani, CNN, Abu Dhabi.
Time for the shout out. Which of these stories made headlines in 1901? If you think you know it, shout it out. Was it World's Fair opens in Chicago? Grover Cleveland elected president? First private telephone installed? Or New York requires license plates? You've got 3 seconds. Go! New York State was the first to require license plates in 1901. Car owners made the plates themselves. That's your answer, and that's your shout out.
And they didn't have numbers and letters on them that might have seemed random. Those first license plates had initials, kind of like a monogram for your car. The first state to actually issue plates itself was Massachusetts in 1903. The first number, 1. We've come a long way from those plates to cameras on traffic lights that take a picture when you run a red.
If you've driven through an intersection, there's a good chance they've seen you. And if you've received a traffic ticket in the mail, there's a good chance you didn't see them. It's taken a little more than 25 years, but red light cameras attached to traffic signals have become almost ubiquitous.
We have red light cameras in more than 250 cities nationwide.
The cameras are a big part of business for American Traffic Solutions. ATS is the largest provider of cameras in the United States, with revenues exceeding $200 million. The newest cameras are equipped with 29 megapixel sensors that can capture high-definition photos and video, quick enough to see the inside of a moving car. Many of the photos and videos are sent here to Tempe, Arizona, where they're processed by ATS employees. Workers review each traffic incident and forward them to the municipalities, who decide whether or not to issue a ticket.
We issue as a company nearly 5 million violations per year on behalf of our customers.
But do the cameras make roads safer?
In general, the studies show that red light cameras reduce red light running violations by 40 to 50% and injury crashes 25 to 30%.
The cameras may be effective, but they're not cheap. Installations can run up to $100,000 each. The cameras have also generated controversy. Critics contend that they are used by cash-strapped cities to increase the number of traffic tickets.
We're trekking cross-country in the northern U.S. today. It's time for the roll call. We'll start with the Stampede, the Stampeders of Stevens Middle School. They're located in Port Angeles, Washington. Making a stop in Minnesota, the Rebels of Champlin Park High School are on the roll. They're watching from Champlin. And in the state of Maine, the Bulldogs are growling from Prospect Harbor. Good to see y'all at Peninsula School. Quasi Aneen has made his choice. The 17-year-old high school senior is going to Yale University. That's impressive for anyone. Yale accepts around 7% of the students who apply. And while Aneen says he's a student, just like any student, he's done something that very few ever have. He was accepted to every school in the Ivy League, all 8 of them, an incredible accomplishment. So why did he pick Yale? Well, Aneen sings and plays the viola. He wants to study both music and medicine, and he thought that Yale had the best music program in the Ivy League, combined with opportunities to study and travel that he liked. He's also getting financial aid from Yale. He won't say how much, but it's reportedly one of several schools that offered to cover at least some of his costs. Yale might be tough to get into for people, but it's got one program that's going to the dogs. If you have one, and it's smart, you might be wondering how it thinks. That's what students are trying to find out. They're studying whether dogs can learn socially like children do. In one experiment, for example, a dog used her mouth to open up puzzle boxes. But after seeing a student use her hands to do it, the dog used her own paws. That's kind of a feat in itself. Forget Pavlov. This embarks on new territory. It's something that for research could establish new dogma. If they're paw-assistant, they may just dig up a breakthrough in dognition. It's time for us to scoot. I'm Carl Azus. The CNN Student News returns Friday.